Welcome to Business Class. I'm Steve Ekstrom from Learn Tourism, a nonprofit academy dedicated to advancing the tourism industry through innovative training and sustainable practices. Our mission? To empower travel professionals and communities with the knowledge they need to create meaningful, authentic, and sustainable tourism experiences. Ready to join us on this journey? Visit learntourism.org and start making a difference today. Well, thank you so much for joining me here in Business Class.
I am Sarah Benoit. I am the co-founder and lead instructor of JB Media Institute in Asheville, North Carolina. And essentially, I've been doing travel and tourism marketing my entire career, so a little over 22 years. And since about 2006, I've been teaching different classes related to tourism marketing, especially around search engine optimization, social media marketing, and digital advertising. And I'm also an avid traveler. I've been traveling since I was a little kid and traveled a lot of different places with my family. So my passion for that world really runs deeper than just work.
How does that passion influence the work that you produce? And I know you guys have a conference coming up too, so I look forward to traveling to it. But how does that passion influence your work?
I think the way that my personal story really motivated me as an entrepreneur, since I've been running my own companies for the last 20 years, is that I really learned the value of getting into other communities and learning about them and connecting with the people and hearing the stories. But most of all, I really fell in love with rural places, kind of hidden places. So even though I love traveling to big cities, and I did a lot of that, especially when I was younger, and I lived in bigger cities when I first started my career, I really started to fall in love with my personal travel to places that were kind of unexpected. So as I sort of had these personal experiences, I went places that I kind of never thought I'd go to, places that maybe not a lot of people talked about, or places that my parents sort of pushed me into, especially when I was a kid. I just really became sort of enamored and excited that there were these places that weren't known by everybody, that not everyone was running to. And there were stories there that no one had ever told. And so that's really what inspired me early on in my career to start working in rural areas. And I also moved to a rural area in my mid 20s. So I came to Asheville, North Carolina, which at the time was the middle of nowhere. And Western North Carolina was somewhere that most people didn't even know what you were talking about when you mentioned it. And, that was really gave me an opportunity to move here, see that we were starting to build kind of a tourism economy here, to become a part of that early on in the game and sort of really get to see what it's like when you go from nobody knowing how special your community is to everyone in the world knowing how special it is. And just being a part of that was so exciting and so sort of magical in a lot of ways. And it really motivated me to get out there and talk to other rural or smaller communities, maybe that hadn't had that influx of tourists yet, and really help them position themselves well and to really think about what makes them special and how they could both capitalize on that while staying authentic and true to it as well.
What do you think the secret is to staying authentic while also increasing visitor volume?
Yeah, and I think there's like that's a never-ending conversation that I think most destinations need to have continuously. What does that mean? What does that look like? Because it does change over time. But I think the real secret is, in my opinion, is transparency and having community conversations. I think that the more that you can start in the beginning of bringing in your community and asking them for their thoughts and asking them for their opinions with the idea that you won't make everybody happy, that's not the goal. But the goal is to be aware of where everyone is coming from, how they feel about the growth, what they envision good tourism to be, what they think the whole community winning means, right? I think if we can start to define those things and put more voices into the conversation earlier on in the process, what happens is we end up with way more buy-in and we end up being able to really discuss places where we don't agree or negotiate on different things in a different way because people feel heard. I think the hardest thing to correct is when you've spent any amount of time with people in your community not feeling heard and not feeling a part of the process. And that's really hard to correct and it's hard to take back. And I would even argue that there's sort of a healing that has to happen in communities where that's happened. And I think we're still figuring out what that means when we say that. But I do think there's something there about that process in the beginning, bringing people in, letting them know they won't always agree, acknowledging that you have a community of different people that have different perspectives, and making space for that from the start.
And I think another important part to that too is for destinations, creating a community of advocates and ambassadors for their work by educating them. And that's one of the most common courses that we're asked to help create for destinations is ambassador and advocacy courses, where you teach people how tourism impacts the community in ways beyond the hotel room tax, in ways that support infrastructure and lower property taxes and vibrancy. I mean, and vibrancy is one of those like intangibles that makes a tremendous difference. And I think we saw that with COVID, that dip in vibrancy in tourism communities made them more responsive to their local communities and made communities
Absolutely.
more aware of the difference that tourists make.
Absolutely. And I think it's really important to see that the people who are visiting the area, sometimes why they fall in love with a particular city or town or attraction or experience is because of the people who are actually providing that experience. And so I see a real connection, something that I don't think gets talked about enough, is that really at this point in 2024, customer service and marketing are the same thing. They cannot be separated anymore. If someone
Yep.
can be walking to their car after they have a good or bad experience to tell everybody they know about it, let me just tell you, marketing and customer service are the same thing. And so I think in the destination world, it's really important to talk about how that customer service actually plays out differently for us, right? Because it's not as transactional or as product based. It's more about there's customer service you're providing your visitors, there's customer service you're providing your local businesses, there's customer service you're providing to your actual just residents. So there's these different levels of communication and service that go into it. And I think if we can really holistically look at those things as one big piece of our marketing and not something that's separated, we actually just do
Mhm.
a better job overall of approaching. And that's because I think historically we've kept those things like they're two different departments in the corporate world and they're two different skills and but the truth is they're not. Really, marketing, being successful at it requires so much attention to the people that you're talking to. And
Yep.
in the modern world with digital technology, you're actually in conversation most of the time now, even in advertising. You are in conversation with people. They can say your ad stinks directly on Instagram. It's not a one-way street anymore. It's really this back and forth that we're building. And so that I think has really strengthened that principle that we have to think of the marketing and communications we do, which is promotional in many ways, but it is also service and it is meant to be that. And those things together, when you do them right, actually build a lot of loyalty and a lot of trust and a lot of excitement. And like you said, vibrancy, right? Which
Yeah.
vibrancy to me is the life, that
Yep.
feeling of being alive when you're in a place.
So I was thinking about your upcoming conference just a little while ago and the opportunity to speak at it. And one of the things that came to my mind is are things that your grade school teacher or your Sunday school teacher lied to you about? And the golden rule is one of those things. Do unto others as you have would have done unto you. And that's a lie in my perspective because it's about empathy. It's not about projecting yourself on others. It's not about projecting your destination
Yes.
image on people. It's about understanding where people come from and delivering the image they want and they need on their terms. In what ways do you find that empathy helps you with your work as an instructor, as a teacher?
I think that's such an important question because I'm one of those people who talks a lot. I have a lot of natural confidence and I get really excited about everything that I'm into. So when I moved to the South, which now is 25 years, so I am told that I'm allowed to call myself a Southerner now. But when I came to the South and started working, and especially when I started teaching, those first few years after I started my first company, what I realized is that I had to be careful sometimes that the exuberance that I have, the excitement I have, the fast way that I talk, that doesn't make other people feel like they're not part of the conversation, right? Or that there's no room for them to jump in, or there's no room for them to have an opinion that's different than mine. That was an amazing piece of feedback I got early on in my teaching career. I was scared to disagree with you. And I was like, oh. you can always disagree with me, right? But it was just simply that my confidence sometimes accidentally makes people think that they can't like push up against what I'm saying. And so that was like really my first kind of experience with understanding, oh, you have to access that empathetic part of you, even when you're excited, even when you're talking about something that you really love, like marketing a destination or SEO, which I'm super passionate about still. And, I really have to make space for that conversation to occur. Like I said earlier, that back and forth, I have to breathe sometimes. I have to remember that introverted people need a minute to take what I said and then come up with a response. And one of the ways that I really learned that, which was super helpful, is I taught in community college early on just to get better at understanding how to be a teacher because I had never thought about being a teacher. I didn't know that would be part of my main job. I didn't know that it was something I was even good at first. And the great thing about community college is right when you get done teaching, everybody fills out a form about what they thought about your class, and then they hand it to you. And then your job as an adjunct is to read through it and then drop it in an envelope in the mail to the lead of the continuing education department. So I would like work 8 hours, teach 3 hours, and then read like 25 things about whether or not I sucked. And that first couple times, I was like, I'm tired and I want to deal with this. But the truth is, once I'd exercised that muscle 5 or 6 times, I got really good at it. And now I feel like it's one of the most rewarding, powerful things that ever happened to me in those early days, is that I just really had to hear from people whether or not it worked for them, whether or not what I presented was interesting, whether or not it made them feel excited or scared, whether or not I gave them my confidence or I made them feel less confident by giving
Yeah.
them too much information to process, right? Whether or not they felt like they had time to ask their questions. All those things I felt like really helped me not just be empathetic, but embrace empathy in a way where I can take really strong criticism from people and be okay with that. Like, really be okay with it, accept it, know my strengths and my weaknesses in great detail, and even become better at teaching. Because when I start my classes now, I know where I'm not perfect. And I'm going to tell you from the first day we start class, right? So that if I'm doing that, you can call me out. You have comfort saying, hey, Sarah, you didn't explain that enough. Hey, you didn't give me time to ask my questions, or you moved too fast through that conversation, right? So I feel like that real work those first 5 years made such a big difference. And empathy is a cornerstone for me because if you leave the classroom, my number one thing is when you leave the classroom, I want you to feel confident enough to do something. It only has to be one thing, but you have to be able to do something with what I gave you. It's not just a theory, it's something I want you to put into practice. And so that's really my goal, that for every student, regardless of learning style or background or whatever it is, for them to feel like they left saying, there's this one thing that I know I can take action on. And so I set that goal for myself, and that helps me, I think, keep my empathy as a center point.
Before we dive back in, a quick word from our sponsor, Learn Tourism, the nonprofit academy, where we're dedicated to transforming the tourism industry with 4 key services: our cutting edge learning experience platform, which offers robust analytics and seamless updates, our custom course development, which ensures tailored learning solutions, subject matter experts who provide deep insights and valuable knowledge, and of course, our engaging speakers who are here to inspire and educate with impactful presentations. Discover how we can elevate your tourism education at learntourism.org. For me, empathy was a learned trait. I am not my sister, who was an empath by nature. And it sounds like you had a similar experience. And
Yeah, I will say I am a very naturally, I think, sensitive person, and I pick up on a lot of things from people. And my mother is an amazing empath who is like literally maybe the greatest and kindest human I've ever known. And so I got to be raised with this energy, and her mother was also the same way. My Nana was one of my favorite people in the world. So I think they instilled that in me so early on that it feels part of me. But if I think back to when I was a tiny kid and I was like just becoming myself, No, I was a total jerk. I just thought everything was about me. And I just wanted to sing and dance and go all over the world. And I figured I was entitled to every bit of joy that I could have. So I feel like they saw early on, like, oh, Sarah loves people and she wants to be friends with people, but she really just gets so excited. She runs over everything else. And so they were just correcting me so early on because they knew I wanted friends.
Now,
So they gave me that skill too, but it was like so early and important when they gave it to me.
tell me about the DIY conference.
So the DIY conference is a great initiative that we've been doing at JB Media Institute for 8 years. It came out of a relationship we have to a gentleman named Chris Kavanaugh. He is one of the most well-known tourism experts in our region and across the world. He's worked in all sorts of different countries and places, but in Asheville, he's quite beloved. He was here during COVID as kind of our crisis manager from a destination perspective. But he came to Justin and I, my business partner, and said, we all go to these different travel and tourism conferences. I don't know how you all feel about it, but I feel like not enough of them have really tangible classes where you're literally doing the technical work. You're in the meta advertising platform, you're looking at how an AI tool works, or you're actually exploring Google Ads and the settings and things like that. And so we decided we really wanted to develop something that was about true skill building when it came to digital marketing in particular in the tourism and travel space. And also, I think all three of us have a heart, like I said, for rural areas and areas that are up and coming and areas that maybe don't have all the resources and they're not as popular everywhere else, but they still have something really special to offer. And there's something that tourism could really gift their community if they really strategically planned it. And so that's how, the very first conference was born. And now we have people that are coming every year. We cover all sorts of different topics. I put together a different curriculum every year. We bring in great guest speakers and teachers. And most of all, we get destination marketers and CVBs, as well as attractions and other types of businesses from all across the country. And I think one of the best things we do is really share ideas and tell each other what we've been working on, because a lot of the different concepts in tourism, they need to be applied to your community. They need to be applied to your situation. So you can hear about all these different ideas and concepts. And then I feel like our conference is a place where we come, we talk about a lot of that stuff, but we really start getting into the nitty gritty and saying, all right, how are you going to apply this? Or what are you going to do with this? Or is this tool really worth it or not worth it? Or did this strategy accomplish goals for you or not? And I was really grateful the first few years that we built so much of a community that when COVID hit, it felt like we had a group of people where we all came together. It was like, what are you doing? What's working for you? How are you sorting this out? And so there was just like a really kind of a support network aspect that really increased. And so I'm excited about this year. We got a lot of new stuff to talk about, which is pretty wild. But I feel like there's so much opportunity in the midst of all this change. And the more we can share that with each other, the better.
And what are the dates in the conference again?
The conference is going to be happening November 11th and 12th. And it's right here in Asheville in downtown. We'll be at the Renaissance Hotel this year. So if you come, you get to have a great experience in downtown Asheville, which I would just recommend to everybody because it is lovely here. And you'll be here at a great time of year if you come. But we also have been doing a hybrid version. This will be our fourth year hybrid. So even if you can't come to Asheville, we broadcast all of our sessions on Zoom, and you get to get recordings of every single session, regardless of whether you attend in person or virtually. And so we're really excited to kind of bring it back this year. And there's going to be some really, I think, unique and special classes that we bring this year that'll be super actionable and fun.
Tell me about someone who you look up to as a mentor.
So I'm lucky. I feel like I've had a lot of mentors in my life and have really been blessed to be in Asheville where, over 25 years, I just feel like the quality of people here is really amazing and their hearts are really big. So I'm in an entrepreneurial kind of business world here, but it's just so heart-centered in many ways. We seem like a big city, but we're actually not that big, right? We're still less than 95,000 people total. So a lot of us know each other really well, and there's really long-term relationships there. I think right now, the person that comes to mind first is my friend Aisha Adams, and she's actually been involved in our conference on and off throughout the years. She's an amazing DEI expert, but she also does incredible community advocacy. And when we first met, she was a social media expert like myself. And so we met at a conference. We were both teaching classes. And as soon as I heard her in a classroom setting, I was like, we have to be friends. Who are you? Why do we not know each other? But she has just been a powerful and honest mentor to me to really help me, I think, as I've gotten older and I've had more experience. And I feel like my career has spanned 2 decades now to just really feel comfortable stepping into more of an advocate role and really understanding what that means. That's been something that's really inspired me around the conference, but also just in my tourism and travel work, because I'm literally doing advocacy here at home on the ground as a member of my own community, not just for my job. And so being able to expand that out and really embrace that in different ways, she inspired me to go up and learn how to lobby Congress around tourism and travel. I actually went there and lobbied to fund our national heritage areas, which are really important to us in our region. She's really just like helped me get more, am I allowed to say the word ballsy? That's what I want to say, but
Sure.
it's like she's allowed me to feel like it's okay to push the envelope. It's okay to ask questions. I'm more of a diplomat and somebody who loves to get along with everybody. And so she's really mentored me around there's big changes happening, there's big problems to solve. Sometimes we have to push to ask the right questions and we can't be afraid of that. So she's really helped me bring together that educator in me along with the professional in me and sort of integrate it with what I would call the Baptist minister's daughter in me, right? So that I use all those things together sometimes to move us forward. So we don't get stuck, so there doesn't start becoming a bunch of arguing and just anger at each other or just avoidance. Sometimes in small towns and cities, you'll avoid an argument if you can. Really
Mhm.
figuring out as an advocate, I cannot be in that space and encourage people to have different opinions and for us to figure out what the answers are and to be okay if we don't agree with everybody.
What's something I didn't ask, but you wish I did?
Oh gosh, that's a hard one because I've
You've got
been
a
through
grin
a
on your
lot.
face, so that tells me that there's
I know.
something
I feel
crossing your
like
mind.
my favorite questions these days have definitely been about what have my actual personal travels been. And so one of the most amazing things I did this year was take my dad on a gift that was basically like a dream trip gift to Italy. I've been talking about that a little bit, but I have so many other things going on. I don't get to tell those stories very much, but it was very magical. And I really encourage everyone when it comes to making connections with people in your life that you're really different than and that you don't have maybe the greatest history with historically, that you consider taking them somewhere completely different and just
Yeah,
changing the entire environment and seeing what happens when you're together on an adventure like that. And I don't think you have to go to another country to do that. I think you
but it
can go in
helps.
your backyard potentially.
I mean, it helps to go to another country. Let's be
It's
real.
yeah, it's definitely it adds to the magic for sure.
What's something you'd like to ask me?
I'd love to know when it comes to your vision for travel and tourism and education. Like, if we're thinking like big picture, like the most audacious thing you can come up with, what's that vision for the future where you see the intersection of those things?
I think there are two main objectives to teach universally. One is for people and communities to understand the value and impact of tourism, not just in the tangibles and the taxes and the jobs but in what a difference it actually makes to people's lives. I would not be the person today if it were not for that trip that I got a scholarship to take when I was in junior high or high school. In that way, it's transformative. The other thing that I would like more people or everybody to understand is their role in making others feel welcome. However passive that may be, we all play a part in it. You know, it's the sign in your driveway or the sign in the back of your restaurant or the sticker on your window that tells people they're welcome. And when you take that to heart, it builds those human connections. It builds a sense of commonality. It builds a sense of understanding. I think people are less polarized,
Yes.
and I think you find more of what you have in common. So everything is education, right? I mean, everything is a learning experience. I would like to see that happen. Another big picture item is sustainability and regenerative tourism. Huge advocate for that. In our work with small and rural communities in Africa or the Middle East, how can they build it so that it's sustainable from where it comes from without having to worry about it being regenerative later on? And then communities that are talking about sustainability today, okay, now let's take that a step further. Let's make it better than we found it, not as good as we found it. So that's where I'd like to see things going in the future. If folks want to sign up for your conference,
Absolutely. I do want to add, I really appreciate what you just said because
oh,
I
thank you.
think the way that we're going to solve a lot of problems is for all of us to remember that we are all completely different and we're all exactly the same and everything is interconnected. And I think that's the baseline of what you're talking about, right? That's where I see education and travel and tourism. The intersection of what we can do is exactly what you said. We can really help people understand we're not that different. And everything is connected, everything we do, right?
Mhm.
Everything that we do here affects everything over there, even when it doesn't seem that way. So I really
So
appreciate
true.
that you just said that. But for
So
the
true.
conference, I'm really excited. Everyone can go check out what we're doing at DIYtourismmarketing.com. And I did put together a code for anyone who is connected to Tourism Academy. And here's this, it's just Friends of TA, all lowercase, all one word. And if you pop that in, you'll get $100 off. We'll be launching out probably in about our week, our full curriculum or most of it, but you can get a sense of what we've taught before. You can watch a great video about our event. You can even see on the homepage everywhere that we've brought people from across the country. And we'd love to see you there.
Fantastic. Well, I look forward to seeing you there. I appreciate the opportunity that we had to chat. If folks want to connect with you, LinkedIn or your email,
Absolutely. You can email me directly at Sarah, Sarah, at jbmediagroupllc.com. But if you go to any of the major platforms, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, all the places. You can just look for Sarah Deborah Benoit or Sarah D. Benoit. And I'm on all the platforms. I'd love to connect with folks. So find me, send me a friend request or a like or a follow, send me a private message. I'm glad to connect with your pages as well. And hopefully I'll get to see some of y'all in person sometime.
let me slip into your DMs.
Yes, please. Always. You won't believe somebody just sent me a message on Facebook today and was like, "Oh, I'm sorry. I feel like I just slipped into your DMs." I was like, "Oh no, I'm the person you want to do that to."
Yeah, like please,
I'm all
somebody.
good. I'm like, I'm lucky enough. Most of the time it's cool people, so I don't mind.
Most of the time, that's true. Well, thank you so much for joining me here in business class. I appreciate you.
And thanks so much for having me. I'm really glad that we got connected, Stephen.
Awesome. Thanks for tuning in to Business Class. This episode was brought to you by Learn Tourism, the nonprofit academy where we advance the tourism industry with cutting edge training and sustainable practices. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to visit learntourism.org to learn more about our programs and how you can get involved. Until next time, stay curious, continue learning, and making a difference through tourism.